YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Another quick game of interplanetary I Spy going on here. Back to Mars, back to Gale Crater, and we are back to Mount Sharp, or Aeolus Mons as it's officially called. And this is the main image we're going to be looking at today. This is going to be a real quick one, okay? I'll try and keep this around the 10-minute mark if I can. This is the main image. There's also another image as well next to this one, and what I've been doing, I've found this new program which is from Microsoft called Image Composite Editor, which is really cool, and I'll show you that in a minute, but let me show you the clips first. May as well crack straight into it. Links will be below as usual for this image and any others, and there will be at the end of the video some close-ups, and also right at the end some cards you can click on to look at similar things on Mount Sharp. There would be like pyramids and the Forbidden City and other domes and structures, okay? So you can compare them back to back, okay? So here we have it. Now, let's have a look at the raw image first. Now, the raw image is very hard to look at because it has this grid on it. But if you kind of get it at the right level, it kind of disappears. But when you go in close, it gets really hard to look at. But from that distance, you can see there is a nice dome on top of this mountain, okay? Now this is quite a long way off. This is probably about 3 kilometers away, and this is about 1 kilometer up from here to here. So that's a long way off. But the camera has zoomed right in. I do wonder whether people from JPL or NASA who were in control of the rover have actually listened to some of my requests, because in a couple of videos recently, which you may remember me saying, I kind of asked them if they would give us some nice juicy close-ups of Mount Sharp and some of the structures on it. And they seem to have done it. Now, is that a coincidence? I don't know. If it is, great. If not, wow. But yeah, never mind. There's no way of proving it either way. They may have taken them anyway already, and the images could have been being processed for the last month or two anyway, so who knows. But they have been giving us some close-ups, and this is one of them. Not as close as I'd like, but it's better than we've had before of this dome, which you can see here, okay? So now to get rid of this, you have to blur the image using a Gaussian blur with a radius of 1 or 1.1 or 1.2 or 0.9, something like that. Depends on your graphic software and how powerful it is and stuff like that. So I got that image and I removed the grid. There it is. I removed the grid off it and increased the contrast quite a lot on this, and the brightness. So contrast up, brightness up as well. Probably by about 25% or more, I think, on here. 25%, yeah, probably. And that's what you get. It's a pretty grungy image. It's not terrible. It's not really in focus. But it's clear enough to see this dome with a very nice pointed dome shape to it here, and some structures here, some square and rectangular parts to it, almost like an igloo. Imagine like a giant igloo. Now, size-wise, this is really big. Now, I would say this is something in the realms of 300 feet. I couldn't tell you exactly. It's probably 300 or 400 foot wide, and 2.5 to 350 foot height. Don't know. But that's based on the measurements I've used on other videos and looking at similar sized dome structures on the mountain, because there are lots of them. Some of them are very large indeed. Some are 400 or 500 feet high, but most are around the 200 to 300 mark. So I would put this in the slightly smaller category. And it kind of looks a bit like an observatory. Now, I spent a bit of time on this image, and I've been having fun with this this program that I downloaded just last night, and this is great. This is free. This is totally free. This is called Image Composite Editor, and it's a Microsoft program. And It's free. You can look it up. I'll see if I can find the link for it, and actually I'll put that in the description for you if you want to check it out. But this is great because you can get these Mars images. You get the 2 raw images like we got here. Just put them straight in like this. And so you've got stage 1. Okay, let's make that full size. Stitch. There we go. Stitched it together straight away. How quick was that? Then you have a chance to crop it, like so, and then you can export it. Now I always export these as bitmaps, but you can use TIFF. That's the equivalent of a bitmap. A bitmap will have a higher resolution and will save every single pixel in the image, and then you can just save it to your desktop or wherever you want to export it to. Okay, so this is great. I mean, I haven't done any really large gigapans yet. I've done some with about 4 or 5 images, and it's so fast. It is absolutely amazing how fast this thing is. I used to do it by hand before and never quite get it to look quite right. And what this does, it kind of merges it together really carefully where the image joins here, and it's really hard to see the join. It's great, really good. So I'm having fun with that. So if you might want to try that. If you're into these Mars images, you may want to try this free Microsoft image stitch software. That was cool. But let's get back to the plan here. Let's stick to the script. Although I never use a script, as you could probably tell. So yeah, here's one of the pans I made here. Nice. You know, I've increased the contrast on it. There we have it. I think it's the one I just showed you a minute ago. And you got this other weird thing here. Now that looks a little bit more irregular and natural, but it may have been something that was built also, as well as this, and it may be ruined. But there's not really enough of that we can't really see enough of that to tell either way yet, because it's largely obscured by this mountain, the mountainside. So don't really know with that. I did do another enhancement of this. Now this, you can see why I downloaded that software now, the Microsoft image stitching software. This is my first attempt at a mini Gigapan here, and you can see the stitch mark here really quite prominently. And even though I kind of blurred over it, it doesn't quite match up perfectly, and it's a bit mucky and a bit untidy. But what I did do with this image is I really darkened it a lot more. As you can see, it's much darker, and really pushed the contrast. And you can actually see some terraced steps here on the mountainside, which don't really show until you increase the contrast. So you can see those steps. I thought those were interesting. There's some very interesting pointed kind of boat-shaped things here, like just here and up here. But they're too vague to actually say either way whether they are. You do have a lot of buttes and butts, or whatever, buttes I think they're called, in this area, and a lot of them are kind of boat-shaped. And obviously these would erode down eventually over millions of years and stuff like that. But there are some actual boats in the area, as I've shown before. So there we have it. That was the really dark version. But the problem is when you do that, the picture starts to break up because I've really cranked it. And the sky is all kind of broken up here, and it's very choppy, but it does give you some detail here. You can see those blocks. You can see these blocks here. Get rid of that a minute. And it has not a dome, but a point to it. It's got an actual slight point to it there, which is very unusual and doesn't look natural at all to me. It may well turn out to be natural, but it really doesn't look it. And I know a lot of people out there are saying, "Oh, it's all just pareidolia." Well, no, it's not. This is a completely different colour to the surrounding rock, and it is much, much brighter, as you can see, even in the untreated clip. This is just the untreated clip. I'm going to go through and show you the enhancements as I did them, where I've added shadow and contrast. And of course, when you do that, the image starts to break up. You can see it breaking up here. The contrast is pushing every little difference out more, but you can actually see the dome a lot better. and the shadows getting slightly darker. Now what I did, now I don't normally do this, but on this image the sky was so broken up, I thought what I would do is I would just clean all that up, because it's a large area of data. I just thought, well, it looks pretty terrible. So I went in and just cleaned it all up by going around this, which wasn't that hard to do. There we have it, okay? So that's been cleaned up considerably, but now it looks fake. It looks kind of fake, but it's much cleaner, and you can actually see the shape a lot better. Okay, let's go in a bit closer. And I sharpened it as well. And you can see these blocks here. Now those do not look natural, as if built by nature. These look totally artificial. Square blocks, clear square blocks, and square sections here, and a pointed dome. Really, really nice shape, with some darker parts to it there. Don't know what those are, but those are parts of the structure, obviously. Those shadows. Now, whether those are inlets or bits sticking out, I think those are probably inlets. But this may have actually fallen down. One or two of these blocks here may have actually gone in here. This may have been a perfect pointed dome before, like an observatory type shaped building or something. And these blocks may have been, this part may have been damaged and they may have fallen off and down by the side of it. I don't know, I'm just speculating there. Probably not, I mean, I don't know, but it could have been an earthquake or something. You can't get any more detail than that out of it. Even though the image is zoomed in, the raw image, it hasn't zoomed in enough for my liking. I'd like the camera to zoom in a lot further, but it zoomed in just enough to see these shapes. And I've given that a brown filter, orangey brown filter, just to make it look more Mars-like. I'll probably use this for the cover, put the title up here or something. But this is a really cool shape. I mean, I really cannot see how that can be natural. And anyone who says it does, I think is delusional. And look at the difference in the actual luminosity between the rock that it's sat on and it. Completely different. It's a different material altogether. It's quarried. It must be made from quarried stone. It's highly reflective compared to the natural rock. Now, if they were going to quarry rock, they probably would have quarried it from somewhere very close by, but it's not the same as the mountain. Now, can anyone out there who's a geologist explain to me, let's look at that again, how such a thing would actually happen in nature? How would you get a dome like that, which is a completely different colour and luminosity and texture to the surroundings, on the a kilometre up the mountainside? How does that happen? Because I know of nothing in nature that can do that. How would it have deposited there for it to do that? It's absolutely insane. And anyone who, well, if you can come up with an explanation for that, any of you people out there who are geologists or anything, or studied geology, I haven't. I know a few basics. I'm more into archaeology and art and stuff like that, you know. So if any of you can actually explain that to me, how this would naturally form on top of a mountain, between a kilometre and a mile up the side of a mountain, what process would do that? Go ahead, let's hear it. It's about time we started calling out some scientists on this, because a lot of scientists are obviously watching these videos and none of them are actually saying anything. And the ones that have been very negative and very patronising, and usually resort to personal attacks on me, calling me a retard or an idiot or something, and a lot worse, believe me, rather than addressing what's in the images. They never actually address the detail in the images. This is what trolls do, of course. But not all trolls are kids in basements. Some of them are actually professional people who deliberately try and put their narrative across and bully people into thinking one way or another. So who knows what they're up to. Probably too busy making chemical weapons or something. Yes. So that's my bit of science bashing out of the way. But in fact, most scientists are fine, but I just think they don't have time to comment or do anything about this stuff. They're far too busy. But it kind of looks better in black and white, actually, I think. But yeah, I'll put all these clips in again at the end in a minute. That's already gone on too long. Thanks for watching, everybody. Do check out my channel if you haven't watched any of my recent videos. The car is going a bit crazy. People are going mental about the car. Abandoned car found on Mars. Not Elon Musk's Tesla, certainly not. It's a wrecked car. It doesn't look in great condition. But pay attention when you look at it to the wheel on the left. It has off-road tread. And in fact, I posted it on Facebook on various pages. This one isn't a great one, but it's had like 97 responses on here in just like a day. If you see any of my posts on any various Facebook groups, give it the thumbs up or something, you know, because I'm getting a lot of stick for this. I knew I would with this find, the car. And in fact, I said it in the video, I did say I'm going to get crucified for it. And a lot of people are trying to verbally crucify me. But it does look like a car. It's got wheel arches in the right place. It's got a number plate. It's got a wheel with tread on it there. It's got the right shape to it. It's got reflective glass or metallic kind of luminosity to it as well. So, and there's the raw image. You can see it there, you know. It looks like a car. Terrible image. But also pay attention to the stuff in front of it as well. That looks like something here with a wheel here and something odd here. And I do show that in the video, so check it out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and share on social media if you can. I will see you soon. Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Another game of interplanetary I Spy going on here. Back to Mars, back to Gale Crater, with this new angle of the Mars pointed dome, which I published, I think, about 9 months ago initially. Here's a clip of that original publication, and here's the new clip here. It's not amazingly clear, but what we do get a good idea of here is the actual shape from a different angle. And I posted this on ArtAlienTV Mars magazine a while back. In fact, I initially posted this last night, but there was the wrong date on here or something, so I had to change the image. So there we have it. We got the image from my previous video there, because this is obviously a part 2, and there's the new clip here. I've got the raw images for both of those here. This is the one I published 9 months ago, and you can just about make it out here. There's also a ziggurat type structure here to the left of it, which is covered in that previous video in part 1. And we have the new angle here, which is from Sol 2287, which was only published a couple of days ago. And we have a real good close-up of the Mars Mount Sharp mountainside here. The camera zoomed right in. It's about a mile away, and they zoomed right into the lower ridges and slopes of Mount Sharp. We have the pyramid over here, one of the pyramids that I previously published, on the right. And we have the pointed dome on the left with another one, which wasn't visible before, that's turned up next to it. So that's really interesting. We've got another one. But we're unlikely to ever see much of that because of the way it's hidden behind this ridge here, this part of the mountain. So all these images will be available to download in the description, as usual. Let's crack on with it. I've got the folder here. I've done some panoramics of the area. I've got the raw images and I've stitched them together in a small panoramic here. I've done some larger ones as well, but I'll show you the smaller one. I think it's this one. This is raw. It looks a bit grey and pasty when it's like this, but basically here's the new view of the dome, the pointed dome, and another one near it there. We go over to the right here. We have one of the pyramids on Mount Sharp showing up behind this part of the mountain. And there seems to be another one over here that's trying to stick up as well, but we can't really see that. There's also some other interesting structures here, which I'll show you. But what I'll do, I will put clips of the previous video, which was this one. I'll put clips of this in at the end as well as the new clips, and put them all together in a nice sequence for you at the end of the video. So if you don't want to listen to me talking about all this, and you just want to see the images and maybe take screenshots, forward to the end of the video, the last 2 minutes, I always put all the raw and enhanced clips at the end of every video I do, about 99% of them. So I got an enhanced version of the panoramic here, which I don't know if that looks any better, but it's got a sort of a brown filter on it, and we have this structure here in the foreground as well, which I thought was interesting. It looks rather like a buried sphinx with a head here, with ears, and a sort of pile of sand up around it here, as if it's been buried in sand. Who knows? There are other sphinxes in the area along this bottom of the lake bed here. There is another massive sphinx, which is about 225 feet long, approximately, which is about a mile or two further over to the left of this. Okay, as you go along the bottom of Mount Sharp, there's another one, which I've shown in a number of videos before. Okay, so it is possible. I'm not saying this is a sphinx, but it looks a bit like one to me. I'll do some more clips of that and see if I can get a bit more detail from it, and I'll put those in at the end for you. So in fact, you may find it a little bit easier to look at in black and white, like I've got here. This kind of looks a bit like a lion, or I don't know. It's a very interesting structure anyway. The curve to it here and another curve to it here, that's symmetry. It has symmetry, and it's got a nice kind of slope to it there, and it kind of slopes off here. I mean, obviously this is buried, but what's underneath here? What's underneath this sand? I'd love to dig around and see what's underneath that, because I'm pretty sure that that is an intelligent structure. I've got another clip of it there, which I can show you. That's quite a nice clip. It shows the other one a bit better. You can see there's another one behind it, and you can see those structures to the left of the structure. The smaller kind of, they're kind of square, and you've got a curve going up to a slight point and then curving back down again. Now, when you look at the image like this, you can actually compare them back to back, which is why I've done this composite here. You've got the raw clip up here, you've got the new one up here, obviously. So the new one here is from Sol 2287, which was only a few days ago, and this goes right back to 1984, which is not quite a year ago, but quite a long time back, about 9 months ago or something like that. But you can see the same features on each clip, okay? Especially these smaller box-like structures to the left. They look a bit more rounded here, but that does depend on the light, the way the light kind of comes around. But you're not really seeing these darker patches that we saw from this angle. Perhaps if I push the contrast on this, let's have a look at it and push the contrast, see what happens. Now to get rid of the grid on the image, what you have to do, let me show you. There's the grid. Now when you download these images, they have this weird sort of grid over them, which makes it very hard to see any detail. And to get rid of that, all you need to do is go to blur. I use a Gaussian blur with a radius of 1, and that magically gets rid of the grid. But unfortunately, it makes the image a bit blurry and a bit pasty. So what you need to do There's the other structure near it as well. That's interesting. What we need to do is then add some contrast to enhance it. Now what I usually do is make it much brighter and then go a bit darker. Like so. There we are. And I usually spend a lot more time than that doing it, but that's just the basic one for you. That shows the dome here. And you can clearly see these darker patches here. There's a dark patch there, a dark patch there, and a dark one there, like almost like large windows or something. I don't think they are windows. They're part of the structure, but they're not visible on the new angle for some reason. Let's see if we can push them out. Let's get the new angle. Now, if we push the contrast on here, some of it may actually start to pop out. Yeah, we got a bit of a sort of square part to it there. It kind of it matches up with the previous images. We got some more structure in here. If we go darker again, that would come out more. Yeah, you can see it's not perfectly domed. It's almost like a ziggurat or something where it has different levels to it, but because it's a long way off, we're not seeing that much detail. Okay, so there is some detail to be had here, and this thing is huge. It's probably about 300 feet tall, possibly 400, but I would say around 3 to 350, and it's very similar in size to the other dome that I published. Here's the playlist with the buildings, and if you want to see the other buildings here along Mount Sharp, come to this playlist on my channel, Mars Buildings and Structures. You've got the pyramid thing there, which is further over to the right. We got the what I call the sewer outlet, which is further over to the left of here, about half a mile to the left. We got this, which is further over near that sewer outlet thing. We got this giant hangar thing, which is cool. We got these buildings here, which are further over to the left again. We got this other Mars dome here, which we can't see today, but it's further over to the right, which is about the same size, about 300 feet tall. So there's a whole row of these buildings along Mount Sharp, as well as some weird bunkers and strange looking structures with emblems on the side of them, like this one here. And it's all part of what I call the Forbidden City. And this is why I called this previous video the Forbidden City Observatory, because a lot of us independent researchers have come to the conclusion there was a city here in Gale Crater, and I think the older part of the city was on the mountain, where maybe some of the holy buildings and sort of royal buildings may have been, like pyramids and temples and that kind of thing. And I think later on, or perhaps later on, that there was a city in Gale Crater. But what we're seeing are only the ancient remains of the stone buildings, the heavy stone buildings that have managed to survive the cataclysm on Mars, whereas perhaps the more modern buildings, like we may have on Earth, were destroyed by the disaster, the nuclear war, or whatever it was. And only the sort of old pyramids and domes have survived because they have a very good, strong ballistic shape. In other words, they can survive massive blasts and cataclysms because of the way they sort of hug the ground, because they're so heavy, they're so large and heavy, and they have the sort of ballistic shape, which means they can deflect shockwaves very well, you know. So this would explain why we're not seeing huge tower blocks and other sort of more modern buildings on Mars, because they've been destroyed. And these old-fashioned heavy stone buildings, massive stone buildings, have survived because of their shape and the material they're made from, and the fact that they're so dense, much like the pyramids we have down here on Earth, in places like Egypt and in Central America. So there we are. So that was it. I'll have a link to the previous part 1 image here, so you can download that. But I'll have a link to the new part 2 image here, and you can see that other pyramid just over here if you want to have a look at that. And incidentally, if you're wondering why the Mars images look orange, this is the latest set of images from the Mars Curiosity rover. This is Sol 2289. When you scroll down here, you can see they put up the actual thumbnail kind of clips here of the different colour filters, and you can clearly see an orange filter there. That's the reason why the colour images look orange, because we have the usual RGB, which is red, green and blue. There's the blue, there's the green, there's the red, and we then have a white and a black plate, which makes, normally you would have that would be it in a colour image, but for some reason they add the orange filter, which if you think about it, you've already got red in there. When you add that to it, it just makes everything go brown, because it's mixing with the red, the blue and the green, and makes it that sort of weird kind of fuzzy brown colour. Now, according to the official blurb, the reason why they use the orange filter is something to do with infrared information and near infrared information, but I think it's a pure obfuscation tool. And when you see the colour images of the surface, they've got this horrible colour to them. Let's find one now very quickly. But I mean, you can see the colour here. Everything looks like that sort of brown colour, and that's not so bad when you're looking at things really up close. It's not necessarily a terrible thing, but when you're trying to look at things in the distance, they don't come out at all, really. What it does, it destroys the contrast in the image. Here we are. Here's some of the brown images here. It destroys the contrast, but in a way, when you're looking up at close objects, you can see into the shadows better when they're brown like this. But most of the images we're getting now, most of the images from the Curiosity rover are black and white anyway, so that's kind of irrelevant. And these are the original size, I think, these black and white clips here. But unfortunately, you have to get rid of that grid. And as I showed you, the way to do that is just to use a little bit of Gaussian blur with a radius of 1, and that gets rid of that, and then you can brighten up the image and do what you like with it after that. It also helps if you enlarge the image and stuff it with pixels. That kind of helps get rid of some of the distortion. Okay, but there is a playlist which I'll link to at the end of this video if you want to take your own Mars clips with your imaging software. There is a playlist I did about how to enhance and how to treat Mars and Moon images, how to enhance them and how to clip them and everything else. Okay, so I'll put a link to that coming up in a minute. So there'll be a link to that, and there'll also be a link to the previous video, part 1, which is Mars Pointed Dome part 1, which will be this one. And I'll link to some of these others in this playlist as well, or the whole playlist, and you can just flip through. A new angle of the pointed dome on Mars, over 300 foot tall, possibly more like 4. It probably goes down below this ridgeline, so we can't see the whole thing. So it probably comes down to about here. But this is obscuring the bottom end, the bottom part of it. Who knows? There we have it. Another interesting view from Mount Sharp that never ceases to amaze me, this place. It's come up with some amazing stuff. So amazing, in fact, that NASA never seemed to mention any of it. They must be absolutely pulling their hair out, some of these people at NASA. I know they're busy kind of making things and building stuff. A lot of them are probably too busy to even comment on some of these Mars images, because they always move on to the next project. And most of them are engineers, really, and are very busy making the next space probe that may be launched in about 10 years' time. A lot of these things, or 5 years. They work years in advance of these operations. So there we have it. Check out the playlist coming up in a second. Check out the clips. I'll put clips to all these images. And thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.